Welcome to another episode of the Chicks on the Right podcast. Very excited today because Daisy and I have been doing a lot of talking about the Tate brothers and how much we loathe them. And so today we have Dani Pinter with us, who is the SVP and Director of the Law Center for the National Center on Sexual Exploitation and is also a lawyer for Jane Doe, who is who is a person that has filed a countersuit against the Tate brothers after they, alleged that she did some things wrong with their Romanian rape cases. And so for those of us who are not totally up to speed with how this case came about, your involvement in it, and where it stands today, could you give us some background?
Yes, absolutely. So Jane Doe, our client, is an American citizen who met Tristan Tate in Miami. He invited her to come to Romania. She thought this was the beginning of an exciting romantic relationship. She was very young, actually not even 21 when she first met him,
Wow.
and then 21 when she, went to Romania. And the reality is pretty quickly, almost immediately when she got there, she got the sense that things were not right. This is, she thought, this super romantic, exciting, guy was going to show her all around Europe. Like, that's what they talked about, seeing these sites, these museums, these shows. She's a musician, she's going to play her music. But she was basically stuck in a house with these other women who most of them didn't speak English. He wasn't even around. He was busy, wasn't the point for us to have this romantic getaway. He's off who knows where most of the time, and she's just sitting in this house with these women, and she's realizing they're all doing webcam. So she's seeing, and I've got to keep things pretty general because that Romanian criminal case is ongoing, and so that's all confidential information. But she was seeing signs that she felt were red flags, and so she texts her family back home and says, I think this was a mistake. I'm going to get out of here. I'm just going to sneak out. And then, we'll go from there. But like any parent and friend, because she was speaking with her parents and also a friend who had actually warned her not to go in the first place. And she was like, you're right. Well, he was a Marine. And so like any friend and like her parents felt like, you're not going to just, okay, I hope you're able to sneak out of this dangerous situation in Romania.
My gosh.
He was like, I am a United States Marine and I am mandated and have been trained to report human trafficking where I think it's occurring. So he called the U.S. Embassy, and the U.S. Embassy, alerted Romanian authorities and raided the Tate's properties and rescued her. So she was taken into custody, complied, as she had an obligation to do with Romanian authorities, of what she thought was going on, right? Her opinion, what she observed. And from there, Romania continued to investigate Tate brothers and launched an criminal investigation into them that, the first case spanned 7 victims. They now have a second investigation that includes over 30 victims. But the Tate brothers are hell-bent on blaming Jane Doe for this situation. They have twisted the facts. They make wild claims that she was paid to come to Romania to make false accusations, whereas she did not walk into the police station and make accusations. She planned on sneaking out. She begged her parents and her friend not to report. They did anyway, and she complied with the authorities when taken into custody in a foreign country. I don't know that she had a choice to do that. She was obligated to do that, and for that, they have relentlessly harassed her, including suing her in multiple different cases. She's trying to defend 3 different lawsuits in America for this.
Oh my gosh, it's unreal. Just reading about these guys, because they have become sort of, I don't want to say like a mainstay, but people in conservative circles talk about them, which is gross. But
yeah.
How do these guys make their money? They make it what, through webcam stuff?
Well, by their own statement. So for years, they went on podcasts, and the only reason they had anything to talk about was to talk about the webcam business. I mean, they've said many times, we are millionaires because of webcam. They brag about how they trick these girls into giving them money, brag about all the money that they get from scamming these guys. That's another thing. I think conservative media likes that the Tate brothers say some good and true things about masculinity, and they just ignore the rest. Well, the Tate brothers have bragged about making fools out of desperate and lonely men. I mean, they've said that many times. They laugh about, there's one podcast that's still out there with the Nelk brothers, whoever those guys are, where he is like bragging about, I took this guy's house, I took his this, we told him he was going to meet the girl, but then I staged this whole fight, so then she doesn't come and he thinks it's his fault, but then he'll be back. And the guys even said, well, don't you feel kind of bad? He's like, no, I don't feel bad. Like, basically they're idiots. So like, he's a scammer from start to finish. He scammed these women into something they didn't know what they were getting involved in. He scams the men on the other end of the webcam, and I think he's scammed the public. He's scammed conservative media. I don't think he has conservative values. I don't even think you can call his values traditional, even, because he has disclaimed marriage and says he will never get married. So I don't, just because he lauds some qualities of masculinity that are considered traditional, I don't think you could even say that he has traditional Judeo-Christian values. I mean, he proclaims to be a follower of Islam, but even the traditions of that faith, I don't believe his actions or statements are in alignment with. So I think it's time to drop him as a conservative influencer, in my opinion.
For sure.
Right. Yeah.
I know, a lot of the Romanian case, it's ongoing, it's confidential and all that. But I think for people like me who continue to see, Andrew Tate posts nonsense every day, just obnoxious, disgusting, gross, misogynistic nonsense. And he's just walking around, and it's like this Romanian case. I know that they were on house arrest for a while, and then suddenly they're just out in the world doing whatever. So at what point are we going to see some justice? Because it seems like they can just get away with everything.
Right. And is it just this Jane Doe, or are there other plaintiffs? Like, are there other...
Yeah, and I think so. This confusion is exactly the Tate brothers capitalize on, and they have from the beginning. So there's a few things. One, Romania does not hold prisoners, even charged with serious crimes like sex trafficking, in like preventative custody, like in jail, under except for very, very, very serious, like this person is like a violent murderer. They basically, the way that their system coming out of communism, they're very the system's built to be shrewd and skeptical of holding people. So they were only in preventative custody for 3 months, which even in Romanian standards is pretty serious, shows how serious the crimes were. But then the way the process is, every 30 days, the prosecution have to justify new facts as to why they would need to be held. So it's almost impossible to hold them in custody while the case is pending. But the Tate brothers kind of spin the American and UK audiences, we're used to the fact that like P. Diddy, for example, was in custody the entire time. So they spin that expectation to be some sort of sign that this was not serious in Romania, when that just was not true. So there's been some of that this entire time. And just to give you a procedural background, the case, so there's 2 investigations. One involves Jane Doe and 6 other women named as victims. 2 of the women named as victims are still cooperating with the Tate brothers and have disclaimed to being victims. So the Tates love to show videos of those women and say there are no victims and are victims, because 2 of the women say they are not, but 4 other women are. And have maintained that they are, and that they were harmed by the Tate brothers. So there's some misinformation, confusion that they play off of. Now, that first case went all the way up through the pretrial stages. Everyone acted like it took a long time. It didn't. I mean, even in the United States, a federal prosecution takes years. And it took about 1.5 years to go from the very beginning to ready for trial. Went through that whole pretrial stage where like the Tate brothers, as is their right, challenging every little thing. I mean, that is the right to do, but that's what takes so long. Right. And the Romanian system also allows for judicial appeal of every single decision. So that would not happen here. Here you have your trial judge, and the defense doesn't get to appeal anything until the end. There are some exceptions, but generally speaking, if you have issues with the court's orders during that time, you got to wait to the end to appeal them. But in the Romanian system, you can appeal as you go, which causes further delay, right? You have to wait for...
Ever.
Have to wait for an appeals court before you can even move to the next stage. But despite all that, it progressed all the way through. The trial court trial judge said it was ready for trial, and they appealed that. And the appeals court then found that there were some issues that honestly were probably right. Two of the more obvious ones were when the Tate brothers were first taken into custody, they were not informed that they were suspects, right? That they were criminally implicated. They were basically told they were just witnesses at that point, which violated the rights. I think that's true. So the prosecutor, basically the judge said, you need to go back and retake their statements after having informed them that they are, suspects essentially. So, the Tates, again, like to say this case was thrown out because of lack of evidence, but there was no evidence that was excluded except for certain statements for issues like the defense being present for the victim statements and the defense being notified of their rights. So the prosecutor just had to retake those statements and then refile the indictment. So they're in the process of doing that, is my understanding. But it's delay. It's just delay that the Tate brothers like to say, case is over. And just quickly, I'll say there is a second investigation that includes over 30 victims, as I mentioned, and includes 2 alleged minor victims.
Oh my God. Okay. So how old? When you say minor victims, how old?
One was 15 and the other, I believe, 17.
Oh my God. So do you think they're trying to avoid due process? Like they just don't want that.
Oh, yeah. I think they're going to do everything they can to just disrupt the case entirely. I mean, they want this case to fall apart. They love to say, take me to court. I can't wait. But you can see through the actions of their lawyers that they've done everything they can to disrupt the case. I think even their misinformation does that.
Yeah, because it spans 3 countries, right? It's like...
Yeah.
Well, and these are different victims. So the Tate brothers lived, although they are American citizens, they grew up mostly in the UK and then moved to Romania in like 2015, 2016. So the UK victims are from their time living in the UK. So pre-2016, there was first 3 or 4 women that went to the police when the Tate brothers were still living in the UK and all alleged, violent assaults, sexual assaults, rape, strangulation. They have voice memos of Andrew Tate saying, I love raping you, for example, and text messages saying, oh, get over it. I choked you a little bit. So what? But for whatever reason, the UK and the prosecution, the law enforcement recommended prosecution, and they sent it to the prosecutors, and the Crown Prosecution Service declined to prosecute, basically saying, like, we just don't think we'll get a conviction. And that's discretionary, and that happens here too. And that happens, I just like to say that happens all the time with sexual assault cases because the prosecutor knows, like the travesty that happens with the Diddy trial, that even if they have evidence that technically meets the burden, jurors can be influenced by things like the victim's not perfect, or the victim was in a relationship with this person, or the victim was maybe a webcam model, for example. The jury is gonna not be influenced by those things in a negative way. And all the prosecutor wants is a clean conviction. So we see this all the time, that prosecutors won't take sexual assault cases with strong evidence because of issues like that. And so that looks like that's what happened. So those women are suing civilly, but separate and apart from those victims, there are other UK victims who have now come forward to the police, and the Bedfordshire Police Department in the UK is investigating and prosecuting the Tate brothers for those other victims in the UK, unrelated to the 4 women I just talked about. And they have an extradition order from Romania. So basically, in deference to Romania, once the Romanian prosecution is ended, whether they drop it or prosecute it fully and the Tate brothers are in jail, or prosecute it fully and the Tate brothers are acquitted, they have to wait until that process plays out. But then Romania has already agreed, like a Romanian court has said, we will extradite them upon completion of this process. So that is still the status quo.
My God, it's like there's so much going on with these guys. And then the public opinion of them is... It's so weird because we have, we do a show every single day, and we have our comment section that we're like reading through every day. And we're obviously conservative, with you can tell with our name and everything. And we'll read the comments if we start talking about these jackholes, and the people, it's mixed, right?
Yeah.
Which drives us both, I'll speak for Miriam too, it drives us both insane because of people like the Candaces and the Tuckers and other people in the conservative, realm who have profiled these guys and made them I don't even know why they've given him a platform, but they have. And neither one of us really understands it, but I think that there is, like, they don't know all of these facts. They don't know what's going on. And I think, I mean, maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I would imagine that they've glommed on to some of these conservative influencers because it makes them appear better in the public forum.
Exactly. That's intentional, in my opinion. That's completely calculated. If you look at like the Tate brothers statements in the past, you can follow an evolution where they didn't even claim to be conservative, and they didn't even claim to have some of the values they have. You also hear them say things about networking and getting people in your circle, and also how easily people are fooled. Talks about that all the time. You can lie to people so easily. You give them what they want, and they'll believe anything you say. There's many such statements that show that this is a playbook, this is a calculated move to control the narrative. And I think what's going on is, and you guys kind of touched on that, Andrew Tate's constantly posting these, things that are upsetting or vile or whatever. That's intentional. He wants to post something that is controversial because it gets the most views. So it's intentionally rage baity. It's intentionally meant to be divisive and eye-catching so that it gets views. And if you look at his following on X, he must be have the largest followings. I mean, on X, even a following of 100,000 is a big following. He has, I think, close to 10 million. So they have an unbelievable following that is very attractive, I think, to people like Tucker and Candace.
Well, and because Tucker and Candace's audiences are so huge, and those two influencers in particular, and Benny Johnson's another one that's platformed him.
Right.
I mean, they have raised his profile in conservative circles to the extent that even this past weekend, and it was a woman on Twitter or X or whatever, who I fought with because I had retweeted something of Andrew Tate's that was just some disgusting thing that he called women puppies. Essentially, they'll do anything you want or something like that. And I just had made the comment, I will never understand the men who admire this guy or the women who want to be with him for any reason.
Right.
And a woman fought with me about that because she said, you're just buying into the media created narrative about him. And I'm like, I'm literally quoting him. I'm literally quoting him. I don't have to listen to anybody else's opinion of him. I just have to listen to him.
Right.
He is disgusting.
So disgusting. And it's all there. Like, it's all there. You can see the stuff he says and that he does. And then it's like they have been masters at crafting their own narrative. It's gross. It's just so gross.
Yes, they have identified, and I think, this is kind of like, what is propaganda in this day and age?
Yes.
And what do we need to do as the public to be critical of the new media as we were of the old media? Because the Tate brothers have identified an area where people are disgruntled and people are upset. And they're upset at the idea that people would be silenced for views and that people would be targeted for views. And so they have tapped into that to then abuse it and twist it in a really gross way. So they have said so publicly and so often and so repeatedly that they are victims of being targeted for their views on traditional masculinity, which I even don't think that's true, but let's say it is, that they have been targeted. They're tapping into people being upset that the president was targeted with lawfare. So they've targeted into that and aligned themselves and paralleled themselves and done it in such an exhaustive way because they have a big following that they can get to parrot. So they've gotten to this place where the public consciousness, you just know this narrative that the Tates are targeted for their speech, and it's because of traditional masculinity, which is another thing conservatives are upset about, that there's been an over suppression and over attack of traditional masculine values. So they've tapped into that. I am a victim of censorship for traditional masculine values, and conservatives and really just a lot of general people are so triggered by that and emotionally invested in that as a movement that they don't realize that people can be so Machiavellian in the sense that they will literally lie about something you believe in to get your support. Most people don't do that, and you don't tend to believe anyone would do that. So they're not looking out for that. But the truth is he has completely co-opted that narrative to suit his purposes, and to such a degree that now he can say anything. He can really spit in your eye and you will ignore it because you believe that if you criticize it, that's playing in to the attack and the suppression of his speech and the attack of masculine values. And so he's insulated himself to an incredible degree in that regard.
Yeah. And even when he laughs in your face about doing it, they still are like, oh, it's fine. It's totally fine. It's unreal to me. It's just unreal.
In your line of work, I'm sure you've come across like a zillion vile and shocking and horrible stories. I can't even begin to imagine. But was there anything in your work with Jane Doe or any of the other victims or just, looking into the Tate brothers as a whole, was there anything that like really had your jaw on the floor that was surprising even to you?
Yeah, so I'm so glad you asked me that, because the Tate brothers' methods of what I believe is sex trafficking is very common. We see it all the time, which is preying on vulnerable women. They're already in a vulnerable position, right? There's sort of a myth out there, right, that like you can only be a victim if you are this, sweet, naive, perfect child that was snatched out of your home. Well, the truth is, like, a lot of really troubled women and young girls who are coming out of the foster care system with a rap sheet are the targets, because they have all these issues and they're so desperately seeking love, right? So he is targeting women who are vulnerable and who have baggage. They did this, and like I said, there's 30 alleged victims in Romania. So this was systematic, went on for years, and it was very aggressive recruitment. They were recruiting many, many women. But the method by which they did it primarily was to sweep these women off their feet, love bomb them, make them feel special in a way that no one in their life has, including their family, and then manipulate them into performing pornography, oftentimes even though they never did that before. Some of the women had and some hadn't, and really convince them even they didn't want to. Upon resistance, they would beg not to, and they'd say, come on, we gotta live the dream. Like, if you really love me. And some of the things he would do is he would say, this was some of the stuff I found most shocking, is he would say, you know what, this isn't even about you doing the pornography. I want to see that you obey me. You need to obey me, because that's what a real woman does for a man. And you say you want traditional family, like he would use that. You say you're a Christian, you say you're this, you need to obey your husband. And now I just need to see that you'll obey me. That's the kind of thing he would say. And he would get this woman to do it and then give all the money to him because it was for them. And so they didn't really realize they were being scammed, because they're thinking of it like, well, my husband's not going to misuse my money. Of course, he was never thinking about this as a partnership. He never even cohabitated with them. And, would put the money directly in his bank account, and they'd have to beg him for any money. And so that's very common, sort of that scheme, but it's also very hard for people to understand. People expect, unfortunately, sex trafficking to involve children snatched off the street. They expect really, really serious violence. I think that was the confusion with P. Diddy. Although there was sporadic violence, there's also like loving language. So people are confused. But then the Tate brothers admit to using this strategy explicitly, and that this was all intentional by design. That's what shocked me the most. I was like, he would publicly describe buying the book and learning pimping techniques. He's like, Pimpin' Ken is a famous street pimp, means he pimped women on the streets for prostitution. Law enforcement uses his book in training law enforcement. Like, he is a well-known criminal pimp, and the Tate brothers routinely talk about him as an inspiration, as their mentor, essentially. He even mentions it to Candace. Tristan quotes him to Candace Owens, and she just sort of like ignores that. And he admits that, like, this is the strategy to convince women to fall in love with him so he could take all their money. I think if we had admissions like that in P. Diddy, I think he was doing the same thing.
Totally.
But he didn't admit it. So that's what I find so shocking, that he, was very cruel, in my opinion, in his using this system, and then he's very open about it, yet people are still confused.
He preyed on the most vulnerable. He preyed on vulnerable people
and
bragged about it. That's just so disgusting.
And then packaged his methods in courses, which
sell
also made him millions of dollars.
So other men could do it.
Yes.
Right.
It's so disgusting. Has he or have either of the brothers been threatening in any way to you? Like, have they come after you because of your role in this?
Yeah.
Well, I've been sued by,
by them.
It's a third party represented by their same attorneys. So, I would argue that's all part of the intimidation process. But, and our organization, when we first started this case, got flooded with like so vile, like pornographic emails in our system.
Seriously?
Like, yeah, like sick stuff. It'd be like these long, sick, disturbing narratives, get like hundreds of them. And at first we were like, what is this? And then I realized this is like a Tate strategy. So I think it was likely his followers doing that, you know, maybe at his direction, maybe on their own. I don't know. But yeah, so various, I mean, it could be worse. I'm more concerned about my client who's constantly harassed online and threatened, death threats, people constantly trying to find her. She's been living, you know, she was first rescued in 2022. She's been living in hiding since then. And and it's a state of hypervigilance. It's, you know, it's awful, especially how long it goes going on. And she's like, I feel I can't get a job. I can't like put my name on, at least like they'll Google me and they'll see all this nasty stuff. And, you know, she's just constantly looking over her shoulder and, you know, she's expressed like, it's not even just, I know they can't be everywhere to try and murder me themselves, but they have this vehement frothing at the mouth following, and they could be anywhere, anytime. And they're online folks who are like always doxing people. They're trying to find me, you know, and it's just awful. So
her life has been on hold for 3 years.
Yeah.
When do you actually go to trial again? When does that happen?
Well, we'll see. The civil case has, you know, we want to take deference to that criminal case. We would like in my view, and this is just my opinion, the civil cases were meant only to disrupt or dissuade Jane Doe from participating in the criminal cases. You know, they're meant as a part of this disruption strategy to stop these prosecutions, in my opinion. So I want the prosecutions to play out first, as they should. And so, you know, we've been trying to do what we can to, you know, hold the civil case till that happens, stay it until the investigations play out. But, you know, we'll see. I think the whole thing should have been dismissed in the first instance, of course. I think she had a First Amendment right to talk to the police. I think it's obvious that this is a slap suit to harass her for her speech, and that likely in the end she'll have immunity for whatever she said to law enforcement. So I think it was frivolous from the get-go. When the court was not inclined to dismiss it and wanted to at least give them their shot, you know, we countersued, as we believe is our right. But we're just at the beginning of the discovery phase, so this will take some time. We don't even have like a trial date set. Like what we have now is old and has to be redone. And like I said, I believe it should be stayed in any case until the prosecutions play out in these various jurisdictions, but at least where she gave statements in Romania.
Right. Yeah. It just seems so unfair because her life is on hold and then they're out there just being
showing
jerks.
off all their new freaking Lamborghinis or whatever. It's disgusting.
It's so unfair. Yeah.
Well, I mean, obviously we wish you all the success in the world as you move forward with Jane Doe, and we wish her all the best too. And you know, we're following this. We try all the time to help our audience understand that these are not good people, that broken clocks are right twice a day. Just because they say something that you resonate with in one moment does not discount the fact that they are disgusting assholes the rest of the time.
Right.
And so hopefully our discussion with you we will
keep doing it. We absolutely will.
It does make a difference. And, you know, there's, you know, like Nathan Livingston, who does like those compilations. I mean, he was able to get the videos out that the tapealers have out there. Anyone could find them if they want, but they don't see them. And he was able to put them in a you know, compilation so everyone could see them quickly and virally. And that made a huge difference, I think.
But they're suing him.
And of course, though, they're suing him
and
for repeating his own statements. They can't, in my opinion. They can't.
It's insane.
It's speech suppression. So the irony is they're the attackers of free speech.
And you said it. You did and said all of these things. And then you're mad at somebody for putting it out there in a compilation? Like, what is wrong with you?
It's intimidation, in my opinion.
It's craziness. It's
one more reason to find them absolutely vile.
They are vile. And we can say that, right? Are they going to try to sue us for saying that they're vile assholes?
They may try to sue anyone for any reason, but you have a First Amendment right to your opinion, for sure.
Right.
Gosh.
Right.
Well, it is our opinion. We are just simply alleging that we believe they are disgusting.
Right. And we're just we're behind you all the way, you know?
Yes, 100%.
Yeah, not to be condescending, but you go, girl.
Well, thank you. Hey, I appreciate it. I do. And thank you so much.
Thank you for being with us. We appreciate you.
Absolutely.